Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in again tonight to our ongoing bi-nightly or every other night mental health live stream. Again, my name's Dr. Stephen Walker. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Been doing this work for over 20 years, trying to help people in multiple different ways in multiple different settings. So we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the mental health crisis in this country that is growing at an exponential level because people are not talking about their issues. People are not working on themselves. Not everybody. Some people are working on themselves. We have a great guest tonight, somebody who has himself worked on some of his issues, some of his trauma from his past, some of his addiction issues. He's going to come on and share his story. We're going to ask questions. I hope whoever's watching tonight on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube will engage with us and ask questions. The main reason Sean has decided to come on is because, first off, we've known each other for years. So I've been on again, off again, helping him. He's been helping me. Our friendship goes back decades. So he's been keeping tabs on me, and happened to catch one of my live streams, and we talked, and he said, sure, if my story can help people, why not? So tonight's topic is how to heal with help. And that the whole idea is, if you need help, professional help, medical help with a medical issue, you need help with a tooth issue, a dental issue, you're going to get the help. You're not going to be ashamed of it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting help for any mental health related issue. I know there's a stigma to it. Remember, if you've watched any of these broadcasts, if this is your first one, my working theory or my working model is everyone has a degree of mental illness. Everybody, myself included. Everyone has a degree. Some people have mild to moderate mental health issues because of, mild to moderate trauma. Some people have more severe. I'm going to get to a question tonight later from somebody who sent me a great, question, not question so much as something she's going through. And I wanted to read that so that we can give her a little support. And that's another thing. If there's anybody out there who wants to do what Sean's going to do and come on and talk about your story and how getting mental health help has helped you. Wow, mental health help has helped you. That's great. But feel free. Do not hesitate to send me a private message. Here's a text number. You can text me and say, hey, look, I'd love to come on and tell people about my story. Because the thing is, we need people working on their issues. You guys know I've talked about this many times before. If we had more people working on their mental health issues, whatever it may be, we'd have a totally different planet. We'd have a planet of more self-aware people. We'd have people questioning, why am I beating my children? Or why am I a racist? Or how do I deal with different sexuality issues I have? Totally different culture. People were talking about it. So I'm going to bring on Sean. He's going to talk a little bit about where he's been and where he is now. And he's got some interesting points, some things I really think are salient to other people struggling with childhood trauma, which led to addiction issues. So let's bring on Sean. Shawnee boy.
Stevie, how you doing?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. I think we got a little bit of a delay, but it's gonna pick back up. So, like I was saying in the intro, Sean, you've realized that you were getting to a point in your life where you needed to work on some things. You were, as we talked about for years, that things were just building and building and building to the point where you just said, "This is BS. I can't continue living like this." So why don't you tell the viewers, where you've been, what you've done, and hey, Karen, how are you? I'm gonna get to your questions if you have any, but tell us, give us a little background on what Sean's been through.
So really, there's kind of two parts of that story. My extreme youth was extremely unstable. We moved around a ton. I had 4 different stepdads by the time I was 12.
Wow.
Moved around a ton. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with more traumatic stories than mine, but everybody.
Yeah, but moving around a lot, because I know what that's like. Moving around a lot makes you, very unstable when it comes to friendships. You can turn on and off again, closeness. So I feel you.
Yeah. So there's that. You have all your built-in self-defense mechanisms from your youth, and you carry those through the majority of your life, right? So really where I started deciding I needed another person's input and help is when my marriage was really on the rocks, and I'm a people pleaser by nature. So it was really hard for me to come to terms with what do I need to do for me.
And looking back on it now, when you say your marriage was kind of on the rocks, what was going on? You guys were just drifting apart or fighting a lot, or which we all do, by the way. We all have arguments in a relationship. So
yeah, definitely drifting apart. There was some opioid addiction on her part, financial disagreements. That's probably very common, but yeah. So I reached out to my employer's EAP, Employee Assistant Program. I don't know.
Nice.
But yeah, I got some appointments, and the first counselor I went to, he taught me that it's okay to take care of oneself. There's been such a negative stigma attached to selfishness that people tie that to taking care of themselves, but it's okay to be selfish and take care of yourself was the biggest thing I took away from that. And that was really all I needed for that. And then the next time I went back and started getting help was my oldest son started going through some mental kind of health crises and needed some help. And I blamed myself because of the divorce.
Sure.
And I remember the words, I broke my family, coming out of my mouth. So,
but that I think as you did the work, you realized that was also a pattern of Sean blaming himself for things, Sean being put in a position as a kid where it was like always your fault. So naturally, anything that was even remotely related to you that went negative, you immediately jumped to what conclusion?
That it was my fault and that I needed to fix it, because that's what I did. I fixed stuff for my mom. I was the one that stayed with her and tried to take care of her during all the, instability and everything else. So that's my nature, is just to blame myself. And I'm really good at that.
Yeah, right. Well, you're really good at it because that's part of the trauma. A lot of people blame themselves, like, I'm really good at that. That's me doing it. But what happens is when you've been through trauma, the trauma is actually pushing that behavior forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. So did and we're going to go back and forth a little bit in the timeline here, but now how is that going with the blaming yourself?
I'm a lot better at that. Those initial appointments were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I started kind of getting into that. And that's when I started dating who I'm with now. I'm remarried, and that's great, but that she also has a lot to do with where I am mentally. She fully supports and encourages me to be me, which was really weird to get used to. And one of the weirdest things is she gave me permission to be me. And for whatever reason, I needed that.
Sure.
So
when you say she gave you permission to be you, you never had given yourself permission to be you before? What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
That means, yeah, I never knew, and I probably still don't on a lot of levels, that I can give myself permission to do things, because I have been such a people pleaser and really am just now still learning, and it's a long learning process, but still learning how to live my life for me and not somebody else.
Great. And we're getting some good comments here. The person from YouTube, he knows that I don't like his name, so I'm not going to say it, but he's saying, can't believe this show is free. Exactly. That's the whole point of why I'm doing this, because I'm trying to show people that we need conversations about mental health. this is the kind of conversation Sean and I are having as a matter of fact kind of way, like if I was an orthopedist and I'm like, hey, Sean, so how's your knee doing, bro? He's not going to feel any shame. There's no reason anybody should feel shame, especially when you've been traumatized. So, and Karen is saying, I'm the same way. It's always my fault. And yeah, Karen, you know, like Sean did, he found the roots of some of that. He found where he learned to blame himself for that. So, so let's see. Dahir is saying it seems like he has intimacy disorder due to attachment trauma. Wow, I don't know if you're a person in the field, but intimacy disorder is an interesting way of putting it, because disorders, you know, to have a full-fledged mental illness disorder, you got to be in a 6 to 8% range. So attachment trauma, that's a whole nother issue into here. We'll get to that in a second. But so Sean, you were saying, and thank you for all your comments. Keep them coming in. Keep the questions coming in. TB is saying, to get insight like this, I usually have to get my insurance company involved. Don't get me started on that, bro, because insurance companies anyway. But yeah, you're right. So yeah, but TB, you know, you talked about in another show some of the stuff you were going through and some of the things that exactly this is what working with a you know, reasonably good mental health person will do. It'll give you insight, because a lot of times I get people all the time who say, well, I don't know why I'm like this, or why am I like this? Now, when you get the roots and like, oh, okay, so the reason I hate white people, black people, whatever, or hate myself is because I was taught that. And like what Sean was just saying a second ago, he learned in the process that he's got permission to be who he is, meaning that well, why don't you go finish that up and then we'll move on to some other things. So when you give yourself permission now, what's that like? How does that help you?
Well, initially out of it, and that's one of the issues we were going to touch on is with the alcohol abuse and the overindulging and the self-medicating, is because I gave myself permission. Hey, I'm me. I get to do whatever I want. And unfortunately for me, it was way too excessive alcohol.
Sure. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you arrived with the alcohol specifically. How did you get to the point where, like, did you hit a rock bottom, and we don't need to get into all those details, but did you hit a place, or was it a slow decline? Like, did you get to a point where, like, this is BS, I got to do something about this? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a slow decline. There was the self-blame and the guilt for the divorce. And, you know, I still carried feelings of, I broke my family. You know, where would my boys be if I would have stayed, or if circumstances were different? And then eventually my kid's mom ended up passing away. And so I also carried that guilt, and I felt like I was responsible for her death. So it just kind of kept compounding. So it was a lot to work through.
Sure. And just being in that place just must have elicited all that self-hate, that guilt, that how the hell did I get, how did I let myself get here? I'm such a loser. This is, you know, all of that. Cause I can remember some of our conversations we had and some of our texting where you were just in that storm of, you know, and that's what feeds addiction. Because like I've said to people, how many self-loving addicts have I met have I worked with in my day? Self-hate just fuels the addiction.
Yes, very much.
So how did you break that cycle slowly? Like, what did you do? Did you go to AA? Did you get a counselor, or what did you do?
I started with a counselor, a lot of sessions, twice a month for years, probably, working through those, lots of conversations with my wife, and lots of attempting to manage the drinking on my own. But it didn't really work on my own. I actually I did get involved with AA, and started going to meetings. It was Easter. My Easter Sunday was my first day meeting in 2018.
Wow.
So I went to those for.
What did you think of that, by the way? What did you think of the whole AA model? And
very open and accepting people.
mm-hmm.
I had a good experience with them. I didn't always feel 100% comfortable that was the place I needed to be, because it is such a black and white program.
What do you mean by that? Black or white? Like, what do you mean? It was
all abstinence. There's no thinking. Everybody there preaches abstinence, stay away. You have to surrender. You're powerless over the alcohol. And
right.
at the point I started going there, I was, honestly.
Sure. You were using, so of course you're powerless. And like you and I talked about, and again, I'm not slamming AA or saying anybody out there watching this, oh, AA is horrible, get out of AA. I'm not saying that at all. Okay. If anything, the idea of being in a group where you're sharing it and normalizing your issue is great. But one of the issues I do kind of have with AA is they do that. They make people surrender to the idea that you're powerless over alcohol, you're powerless over your addiction. And I get that. I get why it's done. I understand the framework. But the issue I have with that is, like you said before, addiction, and I don't want you to talk about the degrees of addiction that you and I have talked about, or the spectrum, but the addict who is using in an active phase of using absolutely is powerless over their addiction. Yep. Absolutely. But the addict, and I'm not saying you're an addict, or I don't even like that label, but the person struggling with the addiction, when they're not using, they're not powerless. I don't want them to feel powerless. I want them to slowly begin feeling that I'm working on this. I've got some power over these impulses, these urges. So
yes. And that was one of the problems I had, is to continue to go and admit powerlessness, because that's not me. I wanted my power back. I want to be empowered. I need that. That's part of who I am. I've always considered myself a strong person. I've been through a lot. And I've had most of it well, I think.
Sure.
But, I needed to take that back. And that's kind of one of the reasons, the COVID thing, the meeting stopped happening. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, but I think it happened everywhere. But just in not going anymore and having that time back to kind of self-evaluate and think about where I was and where I wanted to be, I did come to the realization that, and maybe somebody else is saying it somewhere, but I think that the alcohol abuse or substance abuse is a spectrum. There are people that if they touch it again, they're right back.
Boom. I cannot be a casual drug user. I cannot be a casual alcohol consumer. Yep.
Absolutely. But then there's people, once they take their power back, there are some social, you have to be careful.
Absolutely.
I try to be careful. I don't want to get back where I was, but I can go to a social engagement. I can have friends over and have a few drinks, and it's okay.
Absolutely. And that's the key, is everybody has to decide what degree of consumption of anything they want, whether that's love, work, shopping, religion, whatever we become addicted to in the sense of need, gambling. Oh, exactly. You hit the nail on the head, bro. Some people, you're right, they cannot be, and I've heard this oh man, Dr. Walker, why can't I be like you and just have a beer here or there or whatever? And that's a hard thing for people to admit if they really decide they can't do that. So it sounds like you found, or you're kind of in a little experiment phase right now, right? So how long were you completely sober, and then where are you now?
I was completely sober for 14 months.
Wow. Beautiful.
And it was a game changer. It was
great.
Get my head cleared out. Wouldn't take that back for anything. And if anybody's struggling with thinking that they're drinking too much, I know it's hard, but try a cleanse.
And try to just come to terms with the idea that you're drinking too much. But as you found out, because I remember, not to share too much, but you would call me or text me when you were in one of those inebriated states, and I would keep saying, Sean, buddy, I want to talk to you, but this isn't the right time. You know what I mean? And then we were able to talk the next day. But you're right.
Yeah, I
What's that?
definitely called you in crisis, and that would be what you said. You have to stop with the alcohol, and it's a depressant. You have to get it out of your system, and those words resonated, and that was one of the many stones in the path to get me where I went and where I am really.
Beautiful, man. So you're now, so you went 16, you said 16 months?
14.
14 months. And now what's your sort of feeling your way of like, what's a manageable amount of alcohol? What's a manageable amount? But the key though is you worked on a lot of what was fueling the need for the alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Talk
Yes.
about that.
So along with the counseling sessions that were twice a month, I started seeing a hypnotherapist. And
Beautiful.
I know there's a lot of ideas and stigmas attached to that. So I was.
But this was a licensed hypnotherapist, right?
Yeah,
This was somebody who,
absolutely.
yeah.
Extremely different than what I thought it was going to be. It was a very professional appointment. It wasn't, when you hear the word tractor, you're gonna
Right. You're going to become like that sleeper cell, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was always on some level aware of what was being said, but I was also had to allow my consciousness to go to some of those scary places. And we did a lot of visual therapies, and it really helped break down some walls and a lot of the traumas from my youth that I carried with me that I didn't realize that were still traumatizing me so much.
Beautiful. And to hear is well, Karen first said, wow, none of this was your fault. I'm sorry you went through that. Thanks, Karen. And then she followed up and saying, I understand the power issue. And yes, we all need to take care of ourselves. Absolutely. And if anybody has watched this show before, my mantra is your relationship with yourself is the primary relationship you should have in your life. If you hate yourself, if you're mean to yourself, I can guarantee you're going to be projecting that outward. And Tahir is saying at the core of addiction is low self-worth. Absolutely, brother. And I relate to that topic. I have a psychology degree major. Beautiful, man. Go on, get that master's, bro. If you're drawn to this, that's what made me. Sean knew me, and we were just reminiscing a little bit back in my days when I was in business and sales. That's how Sean and I met when we were living in Salt Lake City. But I was always drawn to this. I did a lot of work on myself. So Tahir, if you liked this work, dude, go keep moving forward. So he finished up with saying, which helped me become self-aware. Key to any kind of growth process is self-awareness. I found your channel to be very insightful too. Thank you, man. Well, share it, bro, please, because we need to keep having conversations about mental health. So Sean, so we're talking about hypnotherapy and how you have found your degree of drinking or whatever it is, because how do you feel some of that underlying trauma, which was causing you to hate yourself, feel guilty, now that some of that is healing? Because again, you're never really healed, you're just healing. So how do you think those two things are going to work together to help you manage your alcohol intake now?
So obviously I've learned that I can't just go do whatever I want with this newfound self-permission that I learned how to give myself.
Right.
There's everything in moderation. All those things are there for a reason. And a lot of times when you're going through those kinds of things, you forget the most simple of rules, but everybody's journey's different. So the hypnotherapy really helped me break down a lot of the traumas and self-worth issues that I had. I learned that I am worth it, and I am important, and I'm saying a lot.
That's okay, man. I early in I was like, so I feel you. But it's nervous.
So,
This is a nerve-wracking thing. This is not, you're exposing a very, sensitive part of you, but that's the way we heal. Because if we keep this shit, excuse my language, if we keep this stuff inside of us, it just grows and festers. So yeah, don't worry about it, man. Say as much as you want.
And then that's one of the things I want to touch on is learning how to be okay to ask for help, because it's so hard. I can do this on my own. I can figure this out. I'm a smart person.
I don't need nobody.
Right. Reach out. If you're watching this or listen to this, you're obviously curious. It's not a pride thing. You're not a weaker person for asking for help. The best anybody in the world, Tiger Woods, the golfer, even in his prime, he had a coach. He had a swing coach his whole career.
Beautiful metaphor, man.
Reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for the help. It's been a life changer, and I'm so glad that I didn't try to do this on my own, because I probably wouldn't be here today.
And that's such a key point, because I call it pathological individualism that we have in this country, where we've been so culturally conditioned to look at individualism as, I don't need nobody. I'm a self-made man or woman. And that is contrary to most other cultures. Most other cultures are collectivistic, meaning they see themselves as part of a whole. They have responsibility for each other. That's why in places like South Korea, who was exposed to COVID, they were the first to get it from China. That's why they have not had the death rate or the infection rate we have. Why? Because they feel a sense of responsibility to each other by wearing masks and socially distancing. So it stopped the virus in its track, but not here in good old America. So yes, Sean is hitting a great point. If you get help from any other medical field, if you go to the dentist, how come no one feels guilty or feels bad about needing help from a dentist? Nobody. Nothing wrong with needing help. So Sean, be honest, man. And again, I don't want people to think we talked a little bit about topics, but we haven't rehearsed this. Where do you think you'd be if you hadn't reached out?
I would be gone.
Gone. What do you mean?
There were many days where I wanted to drive out to the desert so I wasn't a burden on anyone anymore. And not come back. Sure.
And that's painful to think about.
Yeah.
That you were in such a painful place that you honestly, that hopelessness had gripped you to the point where you felt, I'm never going to heal. I'm never going to get through this. How did you, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you kill yourself?
The only explanation I can give is somewhere in the back of my heart or wherever, there was a spark that knew that I could do it and I could get through it, and it was just going to take a lot of work, and you have to be willing to put that work in. And that's where the self-worth comes in. You learn that you're worth it, and you learn that you're worth the time. It's not selfishness, it's taking care of yourself.
Bingo.
And it's okay for that to be the number one priority.
Exactly. Bingo. And you talked about it's okay. And anyone who's watched this show before know I call it the it's okay pill. The it's okay pill is Sean taking literally pills to himself, like he would take a normal pill, saying it's okay that I'm feeling what I'm feeling. It's okay that I'm down. I'm not going to hate myself. I'm not going to add self-hate to already a negative situation. Well, great. Oh, that's great, Sean. We're glad, all of us, I'm sure your wife, your kids, all of them are glad you're still here. But, for you to be able to admit, not only openly, but to yourself, yeah, I wanted to drive out to the desert and take myself out. That is a sign of what I call post-traumatic growth. Okay, it's key that people understand that trauma is on, like Sean said before, is on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's post-traumatic stress disorder is marked by, clinically impairment and, you're hypervigilant, you're hopeless, you're holding stuff in, you're in denial. And then that disorder grows and grows and it starts manifesting in other areas of your life and you can't get out of it. And then on the other end of the spectrum is post-traumatic growth, where somebody has gone through a traumatic event and has grown from it. So they actually are able to talk about things that before they would never have admitted. And what Sean was just able to do by admitting, yeah, man, there were some times where I just didn't even want to live again, was is an example of post-traumatic growth. And the only, I don't want to say only because I don't want to sound like I'm whatever, but one of the best ways to get to post-traumatic growth is to work on your trauma, to talk things out, to access different licensed professionals in the field, hypnotherapy, psychology, counseling, whatever, spirituality. There's a good pastoral counselor. So great, Sean. So where your post-traumatic growth at this point, where are you at? Like, how are you monitoring the alcohol intake? How are you monitoring any of that trauma kicking back in, telling you, oh no, Sean, you're a piece of crap. This is all just a facade. The real you is going to come out. And so, like, how do you manage all of that? You smile there. Why were you smiling there a second ago?
I'm lucky and I'm blessed to have the great support system that I do. My wife helps me remember what a great life we have. I'm truly blessed, and I have a gazillion things to be happy about in my life. I have setbacks. My youngest, he's supposed to be a senior this year. He hit 18 and said, "Screw you guys! I don't like the rules. I'm out." So,
wow, that's painful.
Yeah, that one was a hard one. There were a lot of.
I remember when he was born.
Yeah, I was looking forward to a lot of the senior year stuff, and so that was hard for me. I guess I could say I was living vicariously through him because my youth was so unstable that I wanted him to have those things and those opportunities to be involved with the school and academics and sports and whatever. But I guess we just look at it. We taught him to take care of himself and prepared him to be independent. And I guess we did our job because he hit 18 and he said, "I'm ready."
Well, and so you're monitoring whatever guilt or whatever that loss, because that's a loss, and what you've talked about tonight and what you and I have talked about is when you grow up the way you do, loss is a trigger, I call them traumatic triggers, they trigger that trauma. So how are you monitoring that?
So I've had a lot of loss triggers. This one, I fell down a little bit with this one, but I made sure I took the time in a sober and healthy mind frame to think through and find the silver linings and make sure that I'm not focusing on the negative things. That selfish little kid, who does he think he is? I did so much for him. No.
Screw him. I don't care about him.
Yeah. I'm happy for him. I did what I'm supposed to do. I taught him. And he knows, if he falls, he can come back. So I monitor that with daily reflections.
Great, man.
Gratitude. I don't necessarily have a gratitude journal that I
hear you. You could have a gratitude journal in your head. So,
the daily commute. I have a job where I've had to drive every day throughout the whole COVID thing. So, the commute for me I love it because it's like me time and I get to think through things. So a lot of gratitude and a lot of thinking, positive thinking.
Great. So we're getting some great comments here. So Karen is saying, I'm addicted to food. This conversation is helping me understand. Okay, Karen, if you're still on, tell us about that. How is it helping you understand? What are you vibing into hearing Sean's story? Because this is exactly why he agreed to do this. He was a little, as anybody would be, he's a little hesitant to expose very personal things about himself. But he said, listen, man, if it helps one person kind of work on their issues, I'll do it. So Karen, tell us how this is helping you understand. So to hear his comment again, thanks for your kind words, encouraging words. I'm very passionate about psychology and healing. I was doing a master's in clinical psych. Beautiful. That's what I did mine in, man. I loved it. And had to take time off due to anxiety. We'll do it next year. Oh, that's interesting. Time off due to anxiety. I'd love to find out, to hear what were you anxious about? Because now I understand that self-awareness alone is not enough. Exactly. I need to heal from my childhood traumas, which I haven't done yet. And see, bro, what you're doing right there, to hear, is you're taking the first step. You're seeing another individual like Sean. I can get up here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and blah 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 blah. But the reason I wanted to, I hope it's not just blah 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 blah. But you know what I'm saying. But to hear from somebody like Sean, who has done the work, is doing the work, is openly working on that. I hope that inspires people, because I am so troubled by the fact, like when Sean said he almost, took himself out to the desert, went out to the desert and took himself out. It pains me to think that there are people committing suicide, killing themselves over stuff that they have not worked on. Why? Because depression and hopelessness will convince you you're never going to heal. You're never going to get better. You're never going to be able to feel good about yourself. And Sean is showing you that that is a byproduct of your trauma. That's little Sean who, geez, man, 4 stepfathers. I can just imagine what the hell that was like. This little kid looking for a male role model. Oh, hey, oh, gone. Oh, yeah, never. Oh, gone. Oh, wait. I can just imagine how that sets up this poor little kid to figure, hey, nobody's going to be there for me. Nobody's going to help me.
Is it my fault they're leaving?
Wow, really? You remember feeling that? It was your fault they were leaving?
Well, yeah, it was there.
Oh, wow. Now, was that told to you, or did you come up with that on your own? No? Okay. But see, that's exactly what kids do. They blame themselves for things that they have no control over. So to hear what I would say to you, my brother, is if you're identifying that you need to heal some childhood traumas, bro, that is a hugely beneficial aspect to doing this work. I don't know if you've caught some of my previous broadcasts, but trust me, I had to heal some emotional wounds from my past and still working on them to get to the point where I can openly talk about them in a way to try to help other people. So what I would say to you, bro, is don't look at the unhealed childhood trauma as a negative thing, meaning like, oh, God damn, this is just holding me back or whatever. Look at it like, oh, cool. I've got a golden opportunity to feel what this healing feels like, so that I can work with other people on that. Okay, Tahir? So seriously, bro, do not let whatever got you out of that master's program because of anxiety, don't let that anxiety convince you of stuff like this. Oh man, if I get into another master's program, that anxiety is going to overwhelm me, and then I'm going to fail again. I'm wondering, Tahir, as I'm thinking this through, is your childhood trauma associated with perfectionism and fear of failure? And if Tahir's not the best one, and I don't know if there's a cultural component to what you grew up with, so you got to look at how that's affecting you, bro. Okay, you got to, because some of the best counselors, no problem, man. Thank you for you're welcome. I'm glad you needed it. Maybe that's somebody, God, whatever, making you. And when I say God, I do believe that there's a spiritual component to us living. And again, one of the things I like about AA, as you know, Sean, it puts you in touch with that whole idea of a higher power. And I think that's a great thing. I think so. So anyway, I'm ranting a little bit here. So let me just quickly get to some questions, Sean. Are you able to hang out for a little bit more longer, or you got to go? Yeah. Okay, great. And if anybody wants, go ahead, Sean.
The chat's scrolling, so I can't see very much, but Karen had said something, and I want to make sure I'm remembering right.
Beautiful.
She said something about trying to figure out what the trauma was. And for me, that's where the hypnotherapy came in.
Nice.
It was really helpful, because she helped me get into the subconscious and figure out really what that was. And it was profound abandonment issues. With all the stepdads and all the boyfriends and everything else, I would be shipped off to live with an aunt and uncle, or shipped off to, why am I not worthy? Why do I have to go and all these other guys get to hang around? So, that was huge, the hypnotherapist, in helping me identify where some of that stuff came from.
Great. And that's what this is all about, people. like Dahir, I just showed Dahir's comment that he is realizing too that a lot of what was holding him back was a perfectionism due to a narcissistic mother. And that is exactly what Sean figured out. Not that, he's the same thing, but when you get the insight, I call it working the insight. When you get the insight, and I have other colleagues that say to me a lot, well, dude, like what? I'm just making up their voice, but anyway, dude, why do you focus so much on people's past? Well, I don't know. Let me think about that for a second. Why does a cancer researcher want to find out how cancer is formed? I mean, because you need to figure out what is holding together the present day behavior, because people come to me all the time. Go ahead, Sean.
Root cause.
Exactly. Well, root cause is roots, you got to get into those roots. It's kind of like I use the example of racism. Who's a born racist? So a racist who is convinced that they are a racist or whatever, they're not going to make any changes. But a racist who's like, well, wait a second. I mean, all black people suck. All white people suck. All Jews suck. All Arabs suck. All whoever we're hating. Once you start questioning that fundamental belief system, then you realize, oh, it's not that I'm a racist, is I was taught to be a racist. And I think what we hear Sean saying and talking to Karen is that, yes, it's very important that you get to those roots, that cluster of why do I hate myself? So Sean, moving forward, and I want to get to some more comments in a second, just to keep the ball rolling, because this broadcast is about you people watching, the people watching and asking and interacting and saying, you know what, screw this. Like Dahir saying, Dahir, you got to look in the mirror tonight, bro, and say, you know what? It's okay that my anxiety affected my master's program, because I didn't ask for a narcissistic mother who made me believe that I had to be perfect. And if I don't get perfect grades, I'm a loser. That black or white thinking. You got to get to a point where you're saying to yourself, I don't need to be like this. I can learn a different way. So so Sean, how are you? What do you have in place now to manage? Okay, maybe the drinking's getting a little bit too much. What experiment? And it's interesting. You just clicked in my mind. I have another client that I've been working with for years, and he went through a similar thing where he got out of AA and then started thinking, well, maybe I can be a casual drug user. That blew up in his face. He was literally almost died. Then he got back out, said, well, let me and then he did it again. And now he's been sober for, I think, 4 or 5 years. He's gotten off alcohol. He's gotten off tobacco. He's gotten off of weed. There's another step that we're working on. So how will you know, okay, maybe I gotta pump the brakes here a little bit.
Yeah. You have to make sure you evaluate where you are on that spectrum, right? Just like the guy you were just talking about. I make sure I don't drink anything during the week. Rarely, special occasions if we go to a nice dinner or whatever, but the week it's water. My wife helps me keep that in check. She doesn't want to see me go down that road again, so
sure.
That's
and you don't want her to see you go down that road.
Nobody wants me to go down that road, including myself,
especially you.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to touch on the perfection thing a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
My personal thing is there's no such thing as perfection. The perfection is in the imperfections. You embrace those.
Bingo.
And
bingo.
That's what life is the imperfections. And it's part of the journey.
Bingo. And when you realize that you learned that you have to be perfect, when you learned early on that little Shawnee had to be the perfect kid, or another stepfather may leave, or am I going to lose my mom's love, or whatever way you learn perfectionism, now you're realizing that it's okay to be imperfect. Now, I'm not saying take it to the extreme and say, oh, well, cool, I'm going to be imperfect and, quit my job, or I'm going to let myself become obese, or I'm going to not be there for my wife. Hey, imperfections is okay. It's about balance.
Yep.
So I want to get to just a quick comment by Karen. Karen is saying, find out what the trauma is so that I can work through it. Exactly. So that's your answer to my question before. Thank you. Is the sexual, physical, and mental abuse, could this be my trauma? Sister, absolutely. Absolutely. If you went through sexual, physical, mental abuse, sister, that's like the trifecta of trauma. You got to work on that, Karen. You've got to say to yourself, you know what? I didn't ask for that trauma. I didn't ask to be a victim of trauma. And that's another, the V word is so stigmatized by these, excuse me, non-trained, non-licensed individuals who want to make people who have been victimized. Oh, you're being a victim. You're being a victim. Let me tell you something. Karen, you were a victim. If you were, I'm going to go from, your comment, you were a victim of sexual, physical, and mental abuse. You were victimized. Now, the key is, do you stay a victim? Do you stay a victim? Like what Sean is saying right now is key. He realized that a lot of the alcohol was fueling that victim mentality, meaning, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're shaking your head. You talk to that.
Yeah, definite self-medicating. And I'm not the professional here, so keep me honest here.
You're a professional on yourself.
You said it when she has the trifecta. I want to say digging into those is going to be extremely hard. Don't be in a hurry. Take your time and do it in a healthy way.
Beautiful. Great point. Great point. Thank you. Don't ever make me look bad in front of my viewers again, Sean, because I will. I'm kidding. But that's a perfect point. Thank you for reminding me of that, because that is absolutely right, Karen. You can't expect overnight changes. If you were sexually, physically, and mentally abused, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take you working with somebody who can work you through that and do a form of exposure therapy where you slowly expose yourself to some of those memories in order for you to become more accustomed to them. And thank you, Sean. What Sean is pointing out is this is a process of healing. This is not, I'm going to listen to a podcast and then you're welcome, Karen, and then I'm going to be healed. I'm going to get to you too, Rose. Don't worry. This is about you slowly allowing yourself to be exposed to those things in a way to begin realizing, yeah, that hurts like a mother blanker, but I can handle that. I got to expose myself to it. Is like I've always said to people, you got to feel it to heal it. Okay. But feeling it and healing it is work. It's work. So thank you, Sean.
Yeah. And to do it, I mean, you have to be vulnerable, and that's scary, but to do it right and to get to that other side, you have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Bingo. And vulnerability, especially with men, we don't like to be vulnerable. I certainly did not have a father who came into my room and said, Stevie boy, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be okay with how you're feeling. You got to talk about how you feel. I didn't have any of that crap. Trust me. Wish I did. But anyway, let's get to Rose's comment. And Sean, we're going to go about another 5 or 10 minutes. So I appreciate you sticking for the whole hour. This is great. I really think that people who watch this or listen to this now or down the road, I really hope you realize that Sean is exactly the kind of role model we need, because he is a person, a human saying to himself, I got these wounds. They were working me, and now I'm working them, and now the healing process is picking up. So let's get to Rose's comment. Sean, Rose is saying, you are worthy and brave. Thanks for sharing your vulnerability, Sean. We're all here to help each other heal and encourage each other's to encourage each other. Speaking about any trauma is one of the best ways of letting go of the mental baggage and giving yourself the self-love you deserve and gaining perspective for yourself. The healing spiritual journey is one of the best journeys I could have gave back to myself from all my trauma that I've been through. And Rose has been a frequent participant in our shows. So that was never my fault. Exactly. And that's what we have to realize, excuse me, as traumatized individuals. It's not your fault. It was not your fault that you were sexually or physically abused. It wasn't. The abuser will tell you that, oh, if you weren't this or whatever, or I'm doing this to help you, it's not your fault. And then she's saying, I went through 12 years of deep therapy. Beautiful, Rose. We're also fortunate to have this live broadcast. Thanks again. You're welcome. Thanks you. I appreciate you guys all coming on, because like I said before, I'm going to keep doing them as long as people are asking me questions and interacting. So Dahir is following up saying, thank you so much for your encouraging words. I really needed it. You're welcome. Yes, it's due to, we talked about the perfectionist mother. Karen is saying, I'm going to check with a hypnotherapist. See, there you go, Sean. Great. Let us know how it's working out, Karen, please. And you know, Karen, I would offer to you, you know, Sean, did you find your hypnotherapist did you do a lot of talk therapy, or is it more like give us a little like glimpse into what your hypnotherapy sessions were like?
So not a ton of talk therapy. She would ask questions to get history, so she would know where to dig. And I would try to take as much to those appointments as I could. She made the comment a few times of how impressed, how self-aware I was, because I would try to take as much as I could to those, because I really wanted to get it out. And unfortunately, I wanted to be able to flick that switch. Yep, I'm better now.
Instant, you know, I snap out of it. Even though I didn't snap into it, I feel like I can snap out of it.
I really wanted the switch, but it didn't happen. I'm glad I did the work.
Great. So, you know, Karen, I can, if it helps, and if Sean's open to it, you know, we could maybe set up a little 3-way texting or something, and he can give you an idea of maybe a deeper insights into how the hypnotherapy worked. But Karen, the thing is, sister, you can't stop believing you can heal. You've got to keep believing that there's a way to heal these wounds. Okay, I'm about to release some, you know, in a month or so, something I've been working on for years about healing. And the minute the person gives up, the minute the person believes there's no hope, they're falling into what I call a psychic fallacy. And that psychic fallacy is believing that you're psychic, that you know the future, that somehow you have been adorned, or whatever the word is, with psychic powers, and you now know that you're never going to heal. Karen, you can absolutely heal. But as Sean perfectly pointed out, it's a process of healing. It's a process of healing. Great. Now Shem is kicking in saying, awesome. I was curious about hypnotherapy integration too. Beautiful. See? So let me keep going here. So Tahir is saying, how to fix a car if you don't know the root cause of the problem. Exactly, brother. Exactly. It's the same thing with humans. If it wasn't for self-awareness and insights, my life would have been completely different now. Another thing I struggle with is impostor syndrome, which is the cousin of perfection. Dude, exactly. You're hitting the nail right on the head, Tahir. So what I would encourage you, and then he's following up saying, thank you, Sean, for your share. I've learned a lot from you and Dr. Stephen. Great, man. Well, we're learning a lot from you too, brother. One of the things I would encourage you to look at, Tahir, before we close out here, is you got to focus on Tahir's relationship with himself, bro. If you had a narcissistic mother that made you feel, and I'm not talking about hating your mom and all that, you're just identifying where the infection got into you. If you had a narcissistic mother, bro, I'm guessing you are really hard on yourself. You put yourself down, you set unrealistic expectations, and you're afraid of the F word. No, not the other F word, failure. You're afraid to fail because that mother or that conditioning from your past told you that failure was the end of the world. There's nothing you can learn from failure. So Tahir, bro, shoot me some messages. Let me know how you're doing. Log back on Friday night. Let me know how you're moving forward. You're welcome, Karen. She's saying thank you to Sean and Steve. You're welcome. Tahir, seriously, bro, you got to take some of that insight, man, and move forward to finish that master's. You have to say to yourself, yeah, I know. I mean, you know, it's not that I'm psychic. I mean, it's just because I've been doing this work long enough that I know when somebody is beating themselves up, bro. But you being hard on yourself, Tahir, is the imposter. That's the imposter. And I'm going to get into the whole a little deeper of how the imposter syndrome is totally mistaken by so many people. But Tahir, you got to get into that conditioning. You got to start thinking, okay? You got to start thinking about your thinking. It's called metacognition. Why am I so hard? Like, why? I mean, where did I pick this up? Well, is this okay with me? What's going on? What's happening? Why am I, it's okay? I don't know how old you are, Tahir. I'm sensing maybe late 20s, early 30s, but I'm 55 years old. Sean is 102, if anyone's wondering. But you got to ask yourself, do I want to be 55 years old and still struggling with this? Do I want to look back on myself when I'm 55 and go, God dang it, why didn't I just finish that master's degree? Bro, don't let that conditioning affect you to that degree. It's okay that it is, but work on it. So, well, listen, everybody, this was a great, and if, like I said before, if anybody to hear, if you want to come on, bro, and talk and just do what Sean is doing, this is how easy it is. This is how easy it is to work with somebody like me. If anybody wants to come on, write that number down, shoot me a text. We can have a pre-phone call, just get an idea of what we want to do. But what I'm trying to do is expose people to what mental health is about, what working on your mental health is about, so that people can realize, oh, you mean it's just talking to another well-trained, licensed individual and working through some of my pain so I can heal and it stop holding me back. This is why I'm doing this. All right. So Sean, buddy, thanks for coming on. Any closing thoughts? You're welcome to hear. Any closing thoughts, or what are your, where do we go? What's next? What's Sean's healing sort of strategy over the next few weeks?
My process is that it never ends. I always will have to work on myself. And I think we all should have to work on ourselves. In closing, if I would have to say anything, do it for you. You're worth it. Heal yourself.
Beautiful, brother. Beautiful. Great. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for logging on and asking questions. Please share this broadcast. Please, once it's on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, we need to keep working on our mental health issues. When we have a society where more people are doing what Sean has done, imagine the ripple effect in Sean's life if he had gone out to the desert and taken himself out. That would have affected his wife, his kids. They would have had mental health issues for years. He would have been killing a excellent human being, a loving, kind human being, only because his negativity from his past had convinced him that there was no way to heal. So if you're watching this and you're struggling, oh man, I never got to Angie's question. I don't know if she's still on. Angie, really sorry. Angie was talking about a negative interaction with her son. So Angie, what I'll just say real quick before we close, if you're still on, you got to forgive yourself for that. And what I would encourage you to do, Angie, we can exchange some more private messages, but you see this great thing you texted me here. Read that to your son. Okay, Angie, read what you texted me to my son, your son. Read that so that you give him some context for why you reacted to him the way you did. Okay, and I'll follow up with you, Angie, after the broadcast or later tonight. So Sean, my brother, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody asking questions. And I'll see you guys again Friday night, and we'll pick up. And to hear, dude, I want to hear an update. Okay, bro? I want to hear an update on how things are moving along and how you're going to nudge the system. Remember to hear no spikes up tonight. Yeah, I'm ready. No, we're looking, like Sean said, this is a process, a gradual ebb and flow. Okay. All right, man, everybody. So I will, Sean, stay on and then we'll tidy up. Thank you for coming on. Thank you. Please share this. Everybody needs to work on their degree. Thanks, Fernando. Everyone needs to work on their degree of mental health, mental illness. We all have it. I have it. Everyone has a degree of it. You got to work on it. Okay, people. See you Friday night, 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Anybody who wants to come on, here's the number again. Shoot me a text. Let me know what you want to talk about, and we'll get you going. Okay. Thanks, Shawnee boy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody who logged on, and I'll see you guys Friday night at 9 p.m. Mountain. Take it easy.